Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 68. Chris, buongiorno.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going all right. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Except for this week was kind of characterized by very dry, boring machine learning lectures. So I am kind of worn down from that. But otherwise, doing all right.
I prefer my machine learning lectures to be wet and juicy.
Okay.
What were you learning that was so dry and boring?
Yeah, it's just a lot of the math behind something called expectation maximization, which is like, so if you have variables that can follow a Gaussian, right? So they have like a mean and a variance, and you want to do things with more than one of those variables. So multivariate expectations, like how can you estimate like data or estimate the functions behind data basically. And it's the kind of thing where you learn the math once and then you ignore it and you just use the programming library. So you have to learn the math, and then the math is hard because there are 10 different variables you have to keep track of. So yeah, it's just annoying math. Yep.
I understand the framing of what you're saying, that there's some fundamental theory that you're learning. You lost me real early on. Gaussian mean and variance and expectation maximization. Can you break those down for me?
I will try in a non-boring way. So yeah,
Okay.
so Gaussians are Gaussian is like a normal distribution. So
Yes. Okay.
yeah, so you have a mean and a standard deviation for your normal distribution.
Oh yes, you can define a normally distributed curve based on where the middle is and what the standard distribution is, and just based on those two numbers, you can define the shape of what that normal distribution looks like.
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Yep.
with you.
Okay. All right. And now say you have say two variables. Two is more than one, right? So we're talking about multiple variables. So you have two variables and you want to find the mean and standard deviation for these two variables that you have. So you
Hold
don't know
on.
what the
I the two variables are not mean and standard deviation.
correct. Each of the two variables each have their own mean and standard deviation.
Yes. Okay. Both of these two variables have their own Gaussian standard distribution curve, and I'm trying to figure out the mean and standard deviation for each of those two variables.
Yes.
Okay. Are they're correlated?
Nope.
Okay.
And then you start getting in data.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's basically the problem.
Okay. So for these two variables, I can make a guess as to what their mean and standard distribution are. So I'm guessing four numbers, and I'm getting back one input of like how close I am to guessing it correctly.
No, you're getting the values from say you're getting values that have been pulled from the distribution. So and I said they're not correlated. Actually, they can be correlated. You get something called the correlation, the covariance, which is the correlation basically, and then the precision matrix, which is the inverse of that. So you know that also, or you can find that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but you just start getting values like -1, 1, and -2, 3, and 5, 7.
Okay.
So
And what are these values telling me?
They're values pulled from the distribution. So they're
Okay.
it's like data. It's like you're observing these data points from the underlying distribution.
Okay. So I'm doing a random. Oh, I forgot what this is called. Like a Monte Carlo simulation where I'm
Like
just
a random
throwing.
sampling. Or,
Okay. I'm random sampling for both of these two variables. Give me your value at this number, and then I get back the values for each of them. And now based on the input and based on the input of what my y value was, or I guess x. I'm inputting x, and both of those two variables are returning y. And now I'm plotting those two y variables to try to figure out what's the random distribution. What's the standard distribution for each of those variables. And then from that I can derive the mean and standard deviation.
close enough.
Okay, cool. Why do you care about these things?
Because in the real world, you have data, and you want to sort of fit a function to the data that you have, so that you can estimate something in the future. So say you have like prices for something, and you get a bunch of prices, and you're like, what's the price going to be in the future?
Yes.
Then you can find a function to estimate the price.
Okay, this is just a tool in your toolkit to be able to say, I have a huge data set. Assume it's random. It's a standard deviation, a Gaussian distribution. Run your function to figure out what the mean and standard deviation are to fit this to a Gaussian distribution.
Yep.
Cool. Neat. All right. Yeah, I can totally see how that would be something that like you learn the theory behind and then you never need to use it again. You just use the function that's already built. That's cool though. It's like a little helper function in a math library. Neat. You showed me some of your LaTeX papers that you're doing your homework in, and like, man, it's beautiful. I have no idea what it means, and there's gamma symbols that I've never seen in math before. It's pretty cool. So, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
I can see why you would say it's dry, but
Yeah. If it makes you feel better, I hardly have any idea what it means either. So
you're able to explain it pretty well. Cool. What did you get up to this last week? Give me an update on Acorn Chat. What is the week's project?
Yeah, so for the SaaS stuff this week, the non-dry stuff, we should lead with the non-dry stuff instead of all the boring stuff. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, so I am very close to submitting to the Slack App Store with Acorn Chat. It is functionally complete. It does what it says it does, so that's good. People can sign up and they can pay for it, and it all technically works now. So people can just go to Acorn Chat and add it to Slack and get it working. The thing I want to do next is add it to the Slack App Store, because that's where people are actually searching for this kind of stuff. I think last time I talked about the pretty long checklist. Maybe I didn't. There's a pretty long checklist of things you have to do to get it added to the Slack App Store, including stuff like for every permission you ask for, you have to have a reason why. And there's like 20 or 30 permissions that I ask for, like
Oof.
I want to read the users. I want to be able to write to a channel. I want to be able to make channels. I want to be able to, So you have to define a reason for each one of those. And then you need like screenshots. Well, technically you don't need screenshots or a video, but I want screenshots and a video because like basically the more full your marketplace, listing is, the better it looks to people. And you can, so I sort of went on there to look at what other people's, marketplace listings look like. And you can feel that even just looking at them. Just go look at 20 of them, and the ones with screenshots and videos you're drawn to way more. So basically the better the screenshots are, like it hardly matters what your text is as long as your screenshots are really good. So so I'm doing that. Yeah. And then I think I have most of the legal stuff out of the way. So you need like a privacy policy and terms and conditions and support, whatever. I think I have most of that all done. So yeah, I'm pretty close. The big downside is the Slack documentation says it can take 4 to 6 weeks to get into the Slack App Store.
Oof.
So yeah, it's like if you thought Apple's 3 days was bad. Yeah, so I guess I'll just submit it and see. I mean, people can sign up for it without it being in the App Store. So
yeah,
I'm close. Yeah.
Microconf growth is in 4 days. So
Yeah.
if it's submitted and feature complete, like I feel like you've achieved your goal of wanting to get this done before
Yeah, I think so.
Microconf. And it only took, I don't know, a month and a half when each of us were initially like mentally thinking that these two projects were going to be like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, and in like an ADHD fueled manic bender, like, okay,
Right.
maybe. But then we wouldn't wanted to touch this for months. So cool. This, we were both able to tackle this really big chunk of work in each of our lives. I'll get into mine later, but get it reasonably done before MicroConf, and feels really good. Good job. Well done. Did a lot of work. You're getting it done. A few things you said that I'd love to dig into. The screenshots and video, we had a conversation about this last week when you were working on it as part of your co-working palms, but I had the realization that like screenshots and video are really effective marketing. That's like a differentiating factor. If you have two products that are identical and one of them has really good screenshots and a video and the other one doesn't, but otherwise they're exactly the same, the first one is going to do so much better because you're seeing so much more of what it does. And like, of course I'm going to install that one instead because I can see what it does. So like you had a few really fun palms from my perspective, because like you'd be like, oh, I need a screenshot that does this sort of thing and I'm not quite sure what to do. And I'd be like, what if you did one that was like this and had this thing on the right side and this one on the left side? And you're like, oh, okay, I could see that. And then 25 minutes later, like you had it done and I was like, cool. I did none of that work, but I offered a suggestion that was helpful, and then the thing was made afterwards. But like, I think the realization I had was making a screenshot is not technical work. And I think I have this bias of that I don't enjoy marketing, but making screenshots is marketing. And I enjoyed the concept of coming up with how to illustrate a concept succinctly in a screenshot. So that's the type of marketing that I like. Cool. What are your thoughts on the screenshots and video and stuff?
Yeah, it's just like you said, it's, it's a really big differentiating factor, especially when there's 20 of the same things. And they're hard work actually. Like even after I did, so yeah, I like, and screenshots are not just like a screenshot of your thing, for the Slack App Store, they're mostly like a screenshot of your thing with like text on the bottom and a nice gradient, and you got to do all that, to make it look nice. And I can do design sort of, but I know what I want to do, and it's hard for me to do it. So it's like the Ira Glass quote, where you like, I know where I want to get to, and my skills aren't quite that good.
Yeah.
And so it's very frustrating because I'm like, I know what I want it to look like, and I can't make it look like that.
Yeah.
And so I just do my best, basically. So at some point, if this starts making actual money, then I suppose that's when you hire a designer to like redo your screenshots and actually make them look really good. But yeah, I think I came up with some that are relatively good, and a lot of especially the competitors to what I'm building don't have screenshots at all, and so any screenshot will be better than none. So yeah, I think I feel pretty good about where they ended up, even though it was frustrating kind of getting there.
Sweet. Yeah, and from what you've been telling me, this is not. I hate Slack, so I'm not in your target market. But from what I know about this problem space, from what you've been telling me, like your product is at least as good, if not better, in every dimension as the other existing things on the Slack App Store to do this. So if you're hitting the Slack App Store with the best marketing, as defined by you have the best screenshots, and it's an app store, so you don't like the game of SEO is really straightforward. It's a very simplified search engine. And are there ads? Can you do paid ads on the Slack App Store?
I don't know about that. I know you could. I mean, you could run Google ads, for example, that goes straight to your Slack App Store like listing or whatever.
Okay.
Also, I will say my features will hopefully be as good as everyone else's. Right now, mine is a simple version, which there are simple versions on there too. But like, I know the next 10 things I want to do,
Sure.
which are basically going to make it feature complete with some of the other competitors out there. But yeah, hopefully it works. I mean, it works, and yeah. So yeah.
Well, simple can also be a differentiating factor. That can be a competitive advantage if you have a thing that with a one-click install automatically does the one happy path that a certain type of person wants to do. Like, you win. You have a better product, even though it doesn't have as many features. I'm reminded of Chris Gimmer's Snappa.
Mm-hmm.
It's a web-based Photoshop that only has the features that you need to make social media graphics.
Right.
And last I checked, which was like a year and a half ago, I think he's published this, so I think it's okay to say, his MRR... No, his YRR was over $1 million. And his product is Photoshop without all the features you don't need,
right?
that runs in a browser. So like that you don't need to be feature complete. If the core thing to be focusing on is like, who is this for? What is their problem? Solve the problem as quickly as possible. And if you go off track with that, you're muddying the waters. You can implement features that are too much. I'm really cautious of that in FileInbox right now, because I'm at the point now where like, this is a mature product. This has been going on for 7 years, and like I have 8 years actually. I have 8 years of feature requests and things that are built up, and I'm trying as hard as I can to be doing more customer interviews to like get me more centered and focused on like, okay, this is the person I'm helping. But for some reason that's not going through. I like have the system with Rachel set up, but anyway, that's the thing I think I need to be honing my focus to make sure that like I'm staying on this track of that I'm not getting lost in all these side projects of like, let me make a thing to automatically edit videos. Okay, well, that's probably not a thing I need to do. That's probably outside the scope of FileInbox. So yeah, equally important part of SaaS is like making sure that features don't make it into it. So I'm hearing the way you're describing that, like it's not quite feature complete with the other products on the Slack App Store, as that you're seeing that as like a disadvantage or inadequacy, and I don't know that that's necessarily true. That said, I don't know a lot about the space. I don't use Slack, so I don't know. Maybe you're right.
Yeah, I think to get it to where the price points where I want it, I think I'm going to need more features. Is basically what I'm saying. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't need. I've already identified a whole bunch of features I don't want to build into it. So like, there's all these enterprise level like multi-team features that I just don't want to do at all. Like, I don't want to do enterprise sales with this. This is like a like it's on my marketing website. It talks about bootstrappers, or I think startup or small teams. Like, it has those words, and so yeah, this is not. So I've already like removed all of the enterprise features that like Intercom, for example, has.
Cool.
Yeah,
good.
So it's
yeah,
lower.
focusing. You know who your users are. You can, that gives you more focus. You can deliver to them a better product. Circling back to the idea I was trying to express before, like your product is great for a bootstrapper. You have your feature complete with what they need. And if you can come to the Slack App Store, which is this very level playing field, especially if there aren't any paid ads, with the best marketing, you have some screenshots and you have some videos. I feel really optimistic about that. If like for there's probably people coming to the Slack App Store every day looking for something like this.
Yep.
And if you can become the best option by just having screenshots on it and having a product that's a good product, that seems like it would sort of just take care of marketing. So I'm optimistic for you. This is very exciting.
Yeah, which is why I wanted to do it as an experiment, because yes, that's my that is my analysis as well. So hopefully that pans out. We'll find out in 4 to 6 weeks, I guess.
Man, 6 weeks? What are they doing?
I think they're just understaffed, I guess. They say on there something, it says like something like due to high demand or something. It might take up to 4 to 6 weeks. It's just like, now hopefully it comes back in a week. Who knows? But yeah.
This is a version of the moat, I guess, like getting... Once you're in the Slack App Store, you kind of want it to be as painful as possible for other people to get in the Slack App Store, which is gross from an economic perspective. You want like a fair market and things, but good for you for making money and stuff. I was going to ask you something else, and I don't remember.
About Slack?
It might come to me. Acorn Chat, you were doing, yeah.
About Kaggle?
Okay. Oh, yeah, we can talk about Kaggle. No, I was going to ask you something else about the Acorn Chat. It's gone. Oh, well.
All right.
Kaggle, before the episode, you said you had done the thing that you said last episode that you totally weren't going to do. Tell me about this new AI project.
Yeah, so I said I wasn't going to start another Kaggle competition until after MicroConf, and then a new one came up, and it was very similar to the one I just did. So I was like, I have a bunch of code that can basically do this. Let me just try it. And so now I'm in another Kaggle competition.
All right.
Yeah. And this one is kind of interesting, actually, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. So this is what it is. It's from the U.S. Patent Office, I think, or it's about patents anyway, and it's textual similarity. So like if based on a category. So for example, if you say a strong material and then you have steel as an example, then that, for construction is very similar. But if you say a strong material and then you say similar for like textiles, then you want that to rank lower, because you're not going to have like steel being a textile material. That may be a bad example, but basically the same words or group of words can be similar or not similar based on the category that they're in. Okay. And the reason that they're doing this is because, so when a patent application comes in, they want to pull up all the patents that are similar in any way to it. And then the patent officer reads through all of them to make sure that the new thing isn't already patented, basically. And so a better, AI-based way of pulling up these very similar phrases would help with that. My sort of consternation comes because I really hate software patents. I'm like morally opposed to them.
Same.
And at the same time, I recognize how patents, especially in the past and for physical products, have been very valuable. One of the things that the patent office does, there's like two main goals. One of its main goals is to provide basically a repository of intellectual information. And so you have all these old mechanical designs that the patent office, you can just look up, right? And so anything built however long ago, 20 years, I think patents last, or before, you have very detailed specs for those things. And so the idea is to actually not, it's to give people a monopoly on it for 20 years. And then after that, it's in the public domain, right? Anyone can use the things. And so from that perspective, like I totally recognize that as being good. So what do you do for a contest that is going to help in some ways, but also like I'm very opposed to software patents. And so is going to, potentially make it easier for people to get those. So yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Is there a way you could like sabotage your algorithm specifically for terms related to software?
I don't think so.
Okay. I feel similarly to you from a moral and also sort of logistical perspective on software patents. It doesn't make sense to me that you can patent something like, there was a famous case. Apple and Samsung have been just like at each other's throats for the last 2 decades.
That one was like rounded corners, I think. It was like
it?
rounded corners on a phone, basically.
That's so dumb.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Samsung had to make like asymmetric rounded corners on their phone, like the top
Something.
radius was different than the bottom radius. Yeah, stupid. And like double clicking and like the buy now button and like, yeah, I just don't like it. There's a novel by Neil Stephenson called The Diamond Age that paints this utopian and dystopian picture of the future of like, there's just open models for everything. I'm having trouble remembering the details now. I think there's like a marketplace where you can download things. No, the designs are free and you just pay for the material that it costs to print it. So it's as if everyone has a 3D printer in their house. And if you want a couch, you just hit print on the couch and you're only charged for the feed, I think they call it. It's just like feeding you protons of the right type. And then it assembles the couch. And but I don't think you have to pay for the actual design of it. And what this makes is this world where like it's so what's the word for it? You can like build and remix and you can do a bunch of stuff off of what other people are doing and like you advance so much quicker. China, I feel like, is really good at this. YouTube videos of documentaries of like Shenzhen, China. There's these beautiful marketplaces where it's like they all these cell phone parts and people are mixing and matching and doing stuff and copying each other and like that's the culture of it. You copy what other people are doing and you make it better. And I think if you can make that system viable economically, like if there's still a way for creative people to make money, that makes development go so much faster. You're able to get to a much better spot that much quicker. I have this thought sometimes when I'm working on FileInbox and I come up with like a particularly good design for something, because I'll think like, oh man, this would really benefit other people if I publish this library to like interact with Firebase. But that's reducing my moat. So I kind of don't want to do that. I have mixed feelings about it. Like, I understand that was a one-to-one thing with like, we have a business and the business makes things and you protect the business's things with patents. And that makes sense when you're making shoes and cars. And now we have this new type of business that makes software. So we'll apply the same model, but it doesn't quite fit anymore because the design, I don't know. It's like the process is this software. It's all running on silicon, and it could be going so much faster if you were untethered to it. And if you're doing something with steel, like the process is something that's patentable, and that's something you've invented. But I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. And also, as a consumer, I would like things to be going faster. But then, as a person making software, I would also like my things to be protected and like to make money. And yeah, it's complicated. I don't have a good solution.
Yeah. One reason I think, as you were talking about that, I thought about the distinction between like pharmaceutical patents and software patents. This is a big one that's brought up a lot of times. So to develop a new drug costs $1 billion or something. But once it's developed, once it goes through all the trials and once it chemistry is developed and all that stuff, any company can take one of those pills, put it under their put it in their like microscope or their electron scanning microscope, whatever. That's not the right thing. Anyway, they can figure out exactly what it's made of, and then they can replicate that for pennies, like fractions of a penny. And so that's like having software where the code is like one line long, and if you can figure out that line, then you can replicate it for free. Whereas like other software, like the thing that makes Apple valuable is not its rounded corners on its phone. And so those are the patents that just drive me nuts. Patents like for drugs, like without the ability to patent drugs, it makes way less sense for drug companies to spend $1 billion on a new drug because they're going to get ripped off immediately.
Yeah.
Unless they have a way to, give themselves monopoly for 20 years or whatever. At the same time, you're right. As a consumer, like it really stinks that we have $1,000 drugs or $100,000 drugs instead of drugs for pennies. So yeah, I think there is a delicate kind of balance there. I just think it's gone too far with the Amazon having one click and no one else having one click is not what makes Amazon successful. And so it drives me nuts that you can patent that.
Yeah. And I suppose as a consumer, I would rather have $1,000 drug than no drug, and completely getting rid of drug patents would make it so that there are no drugs instead of $1,000 drugs. And maybe Amazon being able to patent the one-click order makes it so that Amazon exists instead of having no Amazon. So I'd prefer that. Well, to your actual question, I think my feeling is, my understanding of the patent office right now is that it's very inefficient. And you're just, man, I would not want to be a patent officer. That just sounds terrible. Like, no one is thanking you for doing a good job at the patent office. It's either like you were too broad or not broad enough, with different people angry at you for each level of the direction. So if you're making tools to make people at the patent office more effective at their job, I would think that would then speed up that engine to get to a better place faster. Like, this is a wave that, this is a question society has about what the heck are we supposed to do about software patents. So in the ideal case, you make something that speeds up the job of people at the patent office by 10%. They're now able to get through 10% more patents in the same amount of time. I think that math makes sense. And maybe then, if we're getting that many patents through, that's going to speed us along to the inevitable facing the consequence of this. Like, well, maybe the model's kind of broken, and like we just made this many more patents, and we're having this many more cases of things going badly, and now that's making this critical mass of this problem is that much bigger, that much faster. So we get to the point where it's resolved that much faster. Like, the concept of the patent office, I don't think is fundamentally broken. I think it just needs to be better in a way I can't describe. Right. So if you're making tools to make them more effective, like the corollary of this, if you had a lever on your desk that was like, I'm going to make people at the patent office this much less effective at doing their work, I'm gonna throw sand in their gears. Like, I think that would be worse. I think that would lead to a better spot slower. So I think from that lens, you can feel good about making their jobs more effective, even though it's, in the case of software patents, not like directly making the world better, but you're increasing the speed at which it will get better.
Yeah, I think that's where I have fallen as well on this. So yeah, it's just interesting because with all software, but especially now that I'm seeing all these use cases on Kaggle, like machine learning is very powerful, like just like software is very powerful, and it can be used for good as well as bad. And so you just have to be a little careful, I think, about what you do. Yeah.
What an interesting philosophical question. Like, imagine you're able to write an AI algorithm that replaces the job of everyone at the patent office, and you can just like, you take his input, the patent application, and you immediately have output like yes or no, approve or denied, and why. I imagine a lot more patents would get made really quickly, because then the cost is also going to go down. Yep. And then we're going to get confronted with this problem that much sooner. Like, what the heck are we supposed to do in a world where you can just patent everything, and you can have, at that point you have algorithms to automatically generate patents if they cost like $1 each or something. We need to figure this out.
Yep. There's two interesting things that have happened recently. One is, I think it was copyright, not patent, but some court in the U.S. just ruled that an AI could not copyright something. I think it's copyright, not patent. That had to have a human copywriter. Now I got to look this up. We'll post it in the show notes maybe. But because they were one of the worries is that you have computers just infinitely generate stuff and copyright it, and then like that leaves no room for actual like creative work if you just have infinite, copyrighted works.
Yeah, interesting.
And then the other thing that's interesting about AI being powerful is there was a news story recently where they were creating an algorithm to come up with basically the best chemicals you can create. So non-toxic chemicals that have some properties, which sounds really good, right? You want chemicals that are not toxic so you can build with them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the algorithm, they flipped a sign from positive to negative, and they created the most toxic chemicals that the AI could generate, including VX nerve gas came out, and a whole bunch of worse things came out.
Oh no!
And most AI is like that. If you're optimizing something, you can flip a sign and exactly negatively optimize it.
Yeah.
And so so that happened recently and spawned a bunch of things like a bunch of discussion about how the same AI could create very, very, very nasty things if you just flip a sign. So
I'm reminded of a quote from my favorite controversial public figure, Jordan Peterson. He has this analogy that for your branches to extend into heaven, your roots need to reach into hell, which I think is him quoting Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the author of the Gulag Archipelago, but I'm not sure about that. The idea being like, if you build a machine that's smart enough to develop the safest things, it kind of also has to be able to understand what not safe things are and would also be capable of making the least safe things, which is exactly what this example was. Yeah, that's technology, right? If you invent fire, it's an incredibly powerful thing of being able to release energy. You have also unlocked the ability to burn things down. With more creative power comes more destructive power. And that's what it's like to be human. I was reminded also of case. I think it's called All the Music as a project. Someone involved in that. They're a musician and they're also a copyright or patent attorney or something. And they were like, "This is ridiculous that musicians keep suing each other for the melodies being the same because." There is a finite number of melodies, like there, especially for the melodies that people are like the way that they're suing each other about them. So he started this project called All the Music, that is every possible melody in the major and minor scales of the Western. I don't know enough music terms. Whatever the Western chord progression something is. Yeah. He just made all of them, and so it starts off like 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. It's like it's right. Whatever. I think he does it for 8 or 10 different notes, and then it goes 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 2 1 1 1 1 1 3, and then you can transpose that into any chord. So that might be like A B A C, and within this corpus of music is every possible song. And he like burned it to a CD because something about patent law, like to be able to patent a song, it has to be in a physical medium. And he published it like under his name and said, "All right, I've published every song. So anyone who makes any new melody, I'm going to sue you." And we'll just see what happens. And he gave a TED talk about it. It's really interesting. I made a website where you can browse all of the melodies in all the music. And lovely. I don't remember what that URL is, but I will include it in the show notes.
When you have so many projects that you don't even remember the projects.
I think I'll link it in the show notes.
All right.
When I first started about it, I was like, what a cool idea. This is, I think, 2 years ago, and just like manically banged this out, and you can hear them. There's no timing, because I think part of the way that the law works is that the timing of notes doesn't matter. It's just like the pattern of the melody or something. Anyway, I remembered also the thing that I forgot earlier. You mentioned Ira Glass's The Gap. I will also include that in the show notes. This fantastic idea of like your taste. If your taste is higher than your ability, that's painful. If you really appreciate art, like paintings, and that inspires you to want to get into art, you're going to be a terrible artist to start off with, and that's going to be especially painful for you because you have a much higher taste. Like you know exactly how bad the thing that you're doing is. So Ira Glass calls that the gap between your ability and your taste. But if you can push through that gap, your gap is like a force pulling you up. So like your ceiling is higher than people who have worse taste, even though people with worse taste, it's easier for them to start. But like you're going to keep pulling yourself up to like, well, the work I'm doing is still not up to my standards. So I don't remember in what context you brought that up in, but that's what the gap is. It's
that was with me doing design.
Like that's right. Yes. I wanted to say also, Why not hire a designer?
That's a good question. Partly a time issue. Like I want to get this done quickly, and a
Yeah,
designer probably takes a couple weeks back and forth. Partly because of money. I want to make sure this makes any money before I spend any more money on it.
sure.
Those are basically the two reasons. Yeah.
Okay. Well, going from like the jump from no screenshots to screenshots, I think is pretty big. So even if do them badly and then see where that goes, and then that's an obvious place to invest in marketing.
Yeah, the other is that as I add more features, I know which features I'm going to add. I know I'm going to want screenshots for them. So like these are sort of temporary anyway. Like I know in 2 months they're going to be out of date. So I don't want to, spend a couple $1,000s on screenshots that are going to be out of date in 2 months.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, bang them out. Cool. Makes sense. Cool. Let's talk about my stuff.
Yeah.
This last week in FileInbox, I worked for 9 hours and 25 minutes. We co-worked for 9 hours and 9 minutes, and I'm confused why that's not a multiple of 25. I didn't look at that.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think there was a time when my timer didn't go off,
Mm.
so we ended up working a little longer. Anyway, and it was great. Got so much done. If I can summarize the last week of work, it was finishing off the ability to record stuff and then and submit the response to the form, and then on the user side being able to see a list of all the responses. And I do some cool stuff with like I'm getting the user agent and parsing that into an operating system and browser, so I can tell you for each uploader what type of computer they're using, and I also get the IP information and the geolocation, so I can tell you where they were. So that's kind of cool. And I'm really it's a really good interface. It's really good. And you can download files. So like I've achieved the basic functionality in the same way that you have for Acorn Chat, which feels really good. What doesn't feel good is it's really buggy, and there's just so many. Man, there were like 2 days last week where I was basically it wasn't 2 days. There were like 3 palms in a row where I was focused entirely on the edge cases around local storage, because I was writing a null value and then I was checking if the null value existed. But if it's null, it's also false. And the life cycle events, there were like race conditions, and it was just oh man, it was awful. But I like to get to the point where it's functional. I traded some technical debt to be able to get there. So now no surface level changes are happening, so it's not quite as exciting every update I have with you, because I don't get to like show you a new thing that this does. Most of my updates for the last couple days have just been like, well, this edge case isn't as big of a problem anymore. And like I wrote some tests for this thing that's still broken, but I'm closer to being able to understand it. There was a day last week, like Friday, I felt kind of burned out. And I had a little RSI in my right index finger. It like got sore, so I made a point of trying to rest that afterwards. But came back at it Monday, and I'm excited about it again. And instead of, I kind of found it fun to solve these bugs in the order I was interested in solving them, as opposed to the most important bugs. And I have like a week before I actually need to get this done and have it shipped from my friend Brian, and before MicroComp. So like I feel like I can be a little relaxed with the order I'm doing them in. So like today I really enjoyed digging into the Firebase emulator for cloud functions, and I'm going to write like a ironclad test engine so that I can make really rock solid Firebase cloud functions. And I'm going to try to make the job for my future self trying to debug issues on this as easy as possible, that he'll just be able to like, as bugs come up, he writes a new test case and then fixes the thing and then runs the test case again and sees, it actually broke this other test case, and fixes that and then ships it. And I'll be able to feel really good about the solidity of this app. It's just kind of slow going. It's much more methodical. It's less creative and more just like, well, this thing works 90% of the time, but if I like do it and then undo it and then redo it and then undo it and then redo it in this way, then it breaks. Right. So let's fix that. Yeah, that's how this last week was. Marching there, not quite as exciting, but we're paying down technical debt.
Yeah, I mean it's important that it works, especially like we've talked a lot about how we want to try to get this into the hands of people quickly. But I think like it's fine for you to be spending all this time now because like you have the first person and you know exactly what use case he's going to use it for.
Mm-hmm.
So you really want it to work pretty well for him. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's not like you're building things, with some vague idea of what might happen. Like, what he's going to use it for. So
Mm-hmm.
like make sure it works for that use case. Yeah, I think that's fine. And by the end of this week, you'll have a bug-free version of file uploading, right? So is that the goal?
The dream. Yeah. It only took me like 2 months to get here.
Yeah, well,
I thought it was going to take like 2 days. Yeah, it feels really good though. Like I'm really enjoying it. It's a nice amount of structure in my life. Every week I know like, well, at minimum I'm going to be pushing this project forward, and then it's like noon 30-ish and I've done my work for FileInbox for the day, and the rest of the day is just kind of like gravy, and I get to play on other projects, and I get to work out and hang out with people, and I can feel good about the work that I did, as opposed to like for the whole day just kind of feeling this baseline anxiety of like, oh well, I really should be working more on FileInbox. No, the rule is I work for it for 4 palms, and then I get to do whatever I want. That's a really good deal with myself. That's a deal that I can be happy with. Yeah, again, reiterating, just like this framework has unlocked a lot of really good things for me, and I'm enjoying doing it with you. You're working on cool stuff too. It's like the screenshots. It's fun. Like I get a free little dopamine hit of like,
right.
I did my thing, and also Chris did this thing. I didn't have to do any work for the thing Chris did. Yeah, it's working out really well. Cool. I would love to dig in a little bit more with you on RSI. Is that a thing? Repetitive stress injury or strain injury? Oh, yep. I asked you before the podcast. Now I don't remember. Is that a thing you've experienced?
Yeah, you said it was strain. I think it's stress or strain. I don't know. Anyway. Yes, yeah. I've experienced. My wife has experienced it too before. I think basically anyone who works at a desk on a computer for long periods of time will eventually experience it. Yeah, it can be really, really annoying. And the kind of the rough thing that I've learned is like there's no one cause or fix based on the injury. Like there's lots of different ways it can go. The only bad thing you can do is ignore it though, because if you ignore it, then eventually it turns into things that you need surgery for. Whereas if you catch it before, you can do things like rest it and use braces and stuff like that. So yeah, in my particular case, a wrist brace helps a lot sometimes, like if I'm really feeling it. Also just sleeping in the wrist brace can help a lot. I have both hard and soft wrist braces, and sleeping in the soft one sometimes can alleviate it. So that's good. The other thing that I'll say is that even if you're feeling it in your fingers or wrist, it can be all the way up to your shoulder or back. Like look online for like it, for example, one of the things that I feel sometimes is, now I can't remember. I think it's the last 3 fingers falling asleep or something like that. Anyway, that's like a problem with a nerve all the way in your shoulder. And so there's shoulder exercises because that same nerve goes all the way to your spine, right? And so any place along where it pinches can be the problem. And so there's specific exercises called flossing, actually, because it's like running your nerve back and forth through the thing that help with that. And so, yeah. I also have elbow and shoulder braces that I have to wear sometimes. So yeah, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, you're much deeper into this than me. I didn't know that sleeping in the brace would be helpful. That's interesting too, and that makes a lot of sense. That I've had that experience before, where like the bottom 3 fingers on one of my hands will fall asleep, and I was always curious about that. Yeah, I'll have to look up flossing. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know any like exercises to do to fix this. For me, I feel it in one finger. It's my right index finger. And I think because that's the finger that uses the trackpad, and that's just like most of the typing that I do is the keys that my right index finger is the most responsible for. I got to start changing my variable names to like not include any of those letters. And my first line level of defense to that is I move the trackpad from the right side of my keyboard to the left side, and I feel like I've had a stroke because it's really hard. Like I have so much muscle memory in using my right hand on the trackpad, but functionally it's the same thing. Like I have 2 hands, and there's no reason why the trackpad should be on the right side. So it's good to be ambidextrous in that way, and then I don't feel that on my left side. But something that I would love to talk with you about as a creative solution to this, and something that comes up, I experience RSI maybe like once a year, and then I usually back off of doing as much work and do more physical things and other movements with my hands, and it goes away. But something that always comes up is using voice commands to control your computer. Have you heard of a thing called Talon, Talon.
I have not.
It's magical. It's and this is another rabbit hole for me to go down that would be a very big distraction if I went for it. But the some of the so it's a speech to text controller for your computer designed for programmers. It's not like text to speech for consumers where like on your phone you start talking and it's typing out sentences. Like it's a model and a language and a system designed for interacting with programming text. So there's like an unambiguous alphabet that's similar to the NATO alphabet, but every letter is just one syllable. And there's Python scripts that you can put in this to automatically do cool stuff, and it's aware of all the names of all the curly braces and stuff. And there's videos on YouTube of people doing this, and I'll include this in the show notes, where it just looks like magic. Like they're speaking in this really strange language. It's like words and syllables, but it's not English. And code is just appearing on the screen like as fast as you could be typing it. It's amazing. So I think regardless of, well, what am I trying to say? I think I'd like to start investing in this now before RSI is a problem, because if I can integrate this as just one of the other ways that I am able to interact with computers, and include that now in this shuffle of like, well, when I start experiencing RSI, first I switch my trackpad to the left side, and then 1 out of every 4 palms, I do them with only my voice and my hands tied behind my back, or like doing my flossing exercises while I'm coding. That, like slowly building it up is what I would rather be doing. If I would rather go blind slowly and be able to figure out how to use the assistive stuff on my computer while I still had some eyesight, and then have that be a slow curve, as opposed to like losing my eyesight in a day and all of a sudden I have no idea how to use computers anymore. Like that would be devastating. So this is something I think I'd like to start investing in the long term. Also, it's just cool, like to be able to show people like, oh, let me just code this thing real quick, and just start uttering these nonsense syllables, and a working program shows up on my screen. That would be really cool. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's kind of neat. I would be really interested to hear your experiences with that. Like, I'm curious, like how things like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like how does like even like tab completion and that kind of stuff work, and how does, I mean, I guess you're in your editor, so that's probably the same. And yeah, I don't know. I'd be really interested to see how it works. I think I would find it very annoying to type like that,
for sure.
But it's better than getting injured. So yeah.
I think it's going to be really annoying at first. Like learning any skill, like, the gap. Like I know how
Right.
quickly it is for me to type out something, and what it feels like to just have an idea from my head effortlessly flow into the computer. And I got here from decades of interacting with computers with a keyboard and mouse and trackpad. So yeah, it would be really painful and annoying at first to do it with this totally new input method, but I think that's a thing I want to be investing in. It would feel good, and I would look cool doing it. I also have this fantasy of like, how cool would it be if I paired this with like VR monitors or like audio feedback or something, and now I'm able to, if I could write programs like while going out for a walk, that would be really cool. Maybe like Google Glass, and Google Glass is showing me the code or something. I don't know. But having this in my back pocket of going towards that future, being able to write code on the go, no matter what I'm doing. I don't quite know what the whole system would look like, but this feels much more practical than like duct taping a keyboard to my pants. Like I would much rather be able to code by something not using my hands.
Yeah, VR is really interesting because you can't type in VR. So yeah, that's neat, and it already has the microphone and everything as input.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, that'd be really cool. I kind of just said that, but I would like that to exist. Cool. We talked about FileInbox. We talked about RSI. I have an update for you on my home automation project.
Yeah.
It's going really well, and I have an architectural question for you. A little summary so far. So the way this works is you have to set up a Zigbee hub that's the broker or router. I forgot what it's called. It's the central source where all your devices are wirelessly talking to that one device. And while I was setting it up, I just made that my laptop, which worked great until I had to turn my laptop to sleep, and then none of my lights worked anymore. And that was annoying. So this last week on Saturday, which is my fun do anything project day, I set up a Raspberry Pi, and that was, I started off just trying to upgrade it because I had a working one from before, and I spent 2 hours just trying to get this updated and working, and I was running into these weird edge cases where like the background service wasn't working because the node version that was included with that package wasn't updated enough to be able to work with NVM, and so I just reinstalled everything and was able to get it working again. I really want to turn this into a series of like step-by-step YouTube videos of here's how you do this from beginning to end, but that was annoying. So now I'm in this position where I have a Raspberry Pi that is running, that has the Zigbee antenna plugged into it, that has the local MQTT broker on it called Mosquito, that is just this like message bus that listens for messages and can broadcast messages and handles, like, if you're subscribed to different channels, you get this message, and if not, other people do. And this feels like a really good bedrock to be able to build something really cool on top of it. And I figured out how to get JavaScript to talk to this Mosquito MQTT broker. So from JavaScript now, I'm able to send and receive messages from any device on the network. So something that might look like is I have this button that is a magical MQTT enabled button, and pairing for MQTT is amazing. You just turn it on and it pairs. If you have on your router that automatic pairing is enabled and the device isn't currently paired to something else, as soon as I get stuff in the mail, like this is the easiest wireless setup process I've ever gone through. You just turn it on and it just works, and then you name it, and it tells you what things you can do to interact with it. Anyway, so
how does that work if like your neighbor gets a button in the mail and turns it on?
That's a good question. I think to be a good MQTT citizen, you should turn off automatic pairing once you have all your devices turned on.
I see.
That's a good question, though. That would get annoying. I think it also tries to pair with the thing that's closest to it. So if my neighbor, I don't actually know that, though. I don't know. That's a good question. You're also hilariously limited in the number of MQTT networks that you can have in a single space in the US, because they narrow the range of wireless frequencies that you can use. So I think in a single space, there's a maximum of like 12 MQTT networks that you can have running at a time. Whatever. Maybe like an apartment complex that would get bad, but it's fine for right now. So my question is, I have a node script that can listen for events like a button press from one of these MQTT buttons, and it can broadcast signals like, hey, light, turn on 50% brightness, or turn off, or turn to this RGB value. And I want to set up systems like automatically at dusk turn off the really blue lights and start dimming the lights and make it more warm. And if I push the button, turn the lights off. And if I push the button again and it's within this time band, like do it to the preset value of the lights. And I don't quite know how to architect that. Like what's the framework in which I should be handling these scenes? There's existing home automation things, but I don't want to do that. I want to code my own thing in JavaScript because it gives me much better control. I can do a lot more with it, but I'm just having trouble thinking of like polling doesn't really make sense because I don't want to be broadcasting, every 5 minutes, hey, reset to this color that you should be for this time. I almost want like a React type thing where I get the state from the network and then I have my own internal state of it, and then I am constantly publishing changes to that internal state, but only if I publish a change that's actually altering the internal state do I make the analog of a DOM update and actually broadcast the signal. I'm just struggling with how to think about how to manage this complexity of, it's conceptually difficult.
Yeah, so you said if the network has a different state than locally, but can the state of, let's say, a light bulb change without your node server knowing about it?
Can it?
Maybe during a power outage or something?
Yeah, if I like turned the lights off. if I turn the lights off at the wall, then it would. Yeah. So if it was something like the lights got turned off at the wall, which is something I'm going to try to prevent. But let's say the lights got turned off at the wall, right before dusk, and then my timer script says, it's dusk, time to change the state of the light bulb. Let me broadcast the signal to dim it. But the bulb was offline for that part, and then I turn on the light at the wall. Now it wouldn't have received the message to dim,
Okay.
which is that's an edge case. Saying that aloud, like I might be able to just assume that the internal state is always going to be the same. Oh, another case for this would be like if I have to restart the router. Now it doesn't. Well, it can get the like when it boots up, I can just get the state of everything and then make that the new internal state.
Yeah. So what I would do then is always assume that you have in your node script that you have the proper state, and so only push. So that's easy. Just only push the change if it's different than your internal state. But then since there's these edge cases where it could be different, then just have a manual override button that flushes the state to the thing. So like say your thing resets and you're like this light should be dim and it's not, then you hit the button on the wall and the node script force pushes all of its updates even if it's the same. That's probably what I would do. Something like that.
I like that. Okay. Okay. I might be trying to make this too complicated.
Sounds like it. Without knowing the details, like it sounds like your node script should be the source of truth for your, and all changes go through it. And if it's not, then it's an edge case. So just have a way, have it like a physical button that you hit that just flushes all the state. Yeah.
Okay. There's some things that I'm struggling with. Of like, I have a MQTT button that has a dimmer on it, so that's broadcasting a value from 0 to 100 of how much it's turned, and that's a software value. It's not like actually physically in the button. It's if it knows that it's at a value of 50 and I turn it all the way to the right like 7 times, it's going to start broadcasting that it's at 100, and then if I turn it a little bit the other way, it's going to say like, okay, I'm at 90, and I want that to be able to map to whatever the current brightness is. Whatever my software defined max brightness is of the bulb, that's the highest you can be, and then 0 is the lowest you can be. So if you dim it with that switch, map between those two values. I might just need to spend more time with this.
Yeah, I think the other thing I was going to say is it sounds like you're trying to make it a little bit abstract, but like you have a limited number of light bulbs in your house with a limited number of things. So just like write a bunch of if statements and, I think that's fine. Like eventually you'll like maybe you can find some things to abstract, but like just start hard coding everything and because you're not trying to sell this or something, like it doesn't have to be abstract. So yeah, just hard code it all, whatever.
I'm doing premature optimization. You're right. Yeah, I'll just keep doing a bunch of if statements. Yeah, and then through that I'll find the abstractions that make sense. Okay, that's good advice. Thank you. I was stuck in the weeds. Yeah, I'll just keep doing if statements. Good. At minimum, like this is such a better environment to be working in than the consumer ones that are like an app on your phone.
Right.
Because I have all of JavaScript to play with, and there was one thing I was doing where I needed to figure out the times of things like dusk and sunrise and civil twilight and everything else. And I have no idea how I would do that in a home automation thing, but I'm in JavaScript, so like I just searched, npm library for
Cool. Yeah.
times for sunrise and sunset, and there's one that just has it. You input your Latin long and daytime, and it tells you all of these cool times for these astronomical events of where the sun is, and that's just like I have all of the capability of JavaScript. If I wanted to have something like when I push this button twice during this certain time of day when this other thing is like this, then play this sound on the speaker or like make this other HTTP request, like and then it's in JavaScript, so I have version control and I can sync it and back it up, and it makes so much more sense than the consumer stuff they're doing. I think consumer home automation stuff is impressive in what it's able to do, but I'm reminded of how great coding languages are and their flexibility, and no code is cool. And I like that it's making programming more democratized, but like nothing beats a text editor, man. Text is so powerful and expressive and specific. I try to pull stuff back to plain text whenever I can.
Yeah, cool. Not only if you could type that text by just speaking.
If only. I've got a gap before I get there. Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got to.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.